Hi, this is Dr. Patrick Holm for the Sports Psychology Podcast. Today I have a special guest all the way from the UK. Her name is Ella McCrystal, and she's a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist, and a counselor. And
Yes.
I met her on her Instagram, incidentally, and I was really intrigued by her voice. She's got a great voice. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the association between what she does and what I do working with athletes. Thanks for joining me, Ella.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So one of the things I'd like to talk about is we work with a ton of perfectionist athletes. And I don't know if you're seeing that as something that's gone rampant in your area of the clients that you work with, but how much are you seeing people that are coming to you and say, my perfectionism is just getting in the way of my performance?
Oh, it's a huge, from my perspective, the people that I've worked with, and I do work with a lot of athletes myself, it's a huge problem because the pressure of trying to reach something that they consider to be perfection when actually sometimes that just doesn't exist is so much about stress and anxiety rather than actually enjoying the sport and feeling their particular sport. It becomes very detrimental in a lot of cases. So it's about training the brain to be more focused on reaching your best rather than trying to be perfect. And hypnotherapy is a wonderful way of getting somebody to be able to connect with their best rather than the perfection itself.
Absolutely. So we talk a lot about the expectations that they have for perfectionists, always wanting to be perfect and not wanting to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And they actually adopt the expectations from others. We find that if there's a perfectionist parent, then it's
Hmm.
more likely that the athlete's going to have some perfection. So do you talk about managing expectations with your clients?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've come across a lot is exactly that. It's often the parent's dream, and it's how the parents view that dream to be. And we all know that dreams aren't reality. The reality is that it's blood, sweat, and tears sometimes, and sometimes you're going to have to lose in order to learn how to be better. So, part of the work that I will do with people is to get them comfortable with the idea of losing, but to aim to perform better next time, to learn from that mistake rather than to try and avoid the mistake.
Yeah, good point. There's always that fear of making mistakes out there. So when you say learn, is that more like a growth perspective? You're trying to get your athletes to adopt the growth perspective rather than what's wrong with me perspective?
Exactly. The attitude that I think is most beneficial for us all is to say, right, that there's a mistake. I don't want to use that mistake as something to beat myself up with. I want to use that mistake as a platform. There's so much knowledge and so much experience to be gained from the mistake that, in fact, if we use it for as a friend, actually befriend your mistakes, befriend those things that have gone wrong, and learn to use them so that you can use them as a platform to do better next time. It's hard for people to get their heads around that idea because, like you say, if their parents have had this perfectionism. I mean, I work with a footballer, was a Premiership footballer in the UK, played international football. He was an alcoholic, actually. He was playing at the highest level. He was in the 2016 Euros, got to the semi-finals, and he was drinking 2 to 4 bottles of red wine a night. That's how much of a problem he had. And when he talks about his experience, his dad was somebody that would spend the whole journey coming home from training camps shouting at him. It'd be sometimes 2 to 4 hours of listening to that. And so it was very, very difficult for him to accept the idea of getting things wrong or failure because he had learned that that was such a bad thing, that he was berated for that. He was made to feel small for that, that to get someone to understand that actually that can be your friend, it takes a long time sometimes. But hypnotherapy can be really beneficial because you're tapping into the subconscious. So the two methods that I would use would be solution focused, sort of cognitive behavioral type therapies, alongside that more subconscious as well. They marry very, very well, those two methods.
The other big phenomenon that I wanted to ask you about is I see with perfectionism, there's often attached another phenomenon we call social approval, which I'm
Yes.
sure you're familiar with. Athletes are really, really concerned about what others think about them. And I actually coined it mind reading in my
Yes.
work. They do a lot of mind reading. Do you
Yes.
see the strong association between perfectionism and social approval?
Hugely. And that need for external validation, for
Mm-hmm.
the to be told you've done well, or for the round of applause. And actually, the chemical process that we have, the neurochemicals we release when we've got people cheering for us. It's such a rush, isn't it? It's such a natural high that actually, when that doesn't happen, and that's your expectation, you mentioned expectations before, when that doesn't happen, it's like, what have I actually achieved? Because that becomes the norm, and they're trained for that, aren't they? They're trained to get that high, to win, to get the applause, to get the approval.
How do you cut that off? How do you get them to focus more on what's important rather than constantly worrying about how others are judging and evaluating them, which is common in teens, by the
Yeah,
way, right?
yeah, for sure. One of the things that I think I go back to is, especially using some of the subconscious methods with hypnotherapy, is to be comfortable with the uncomfortable feelings. And that's a different type of training, isn't it? Because they're trained to, the perfection idea, or to seek that approval through winning. It's to actually make the unfamiliar familiar, to train the brain in a different way. That can be quite confusing. So you have to be careful that you don't treat every athlete in exactly the same way, because they're going to have their own belief systems and their own personality traits. So it is a very sort of intricate process, and it's very individualized, but it is essentially that. It's becoming comfortable with what actually makes you uncomfortable, and starting from that point.
Well, do you find that perfectionists have this love hate relationship with their sport at times? They absolutely love it when they're meeting their expectations, but when they're not meeting their expectations, they hate it. They talk
Yes.
about quitting,
Yes.
and just not wanting to stick with it.
Yeah. A young female boxer who's actually a world champion. She had gone to the Olympics, or sorry, had worked towards going to the 2012 Olympics, and hadn't achieved that, and really was thinking about, sacking it all in. Didn't want to know, was looking at sort of other career options. Then again, with the Commonwealth Games, you didn't get into that, but was eventually taken on by a team and went for the belts and won them. But that whole process was very up and down. From 2012 to 2018, there was 6 years worth of working with her, where it was very much about getting her grounded again, getting her to connect with the love of the sport rather than the result. Because actually, if you do love what you do, the result will naturally come. When you focus on the perfection, that love hate relationship is much more a part of what you're doing then.
So, what are the first three things that you would do if you know you're dealing with a perfectionist? What are the first three strategies, ideas? We don't. There's no such thing as tips, right? In our work, I don't like the word tips. But what are the first three strategies you have to address if you know you're dealing with a high level perfectionist?
One of the things the first thing that I would do is to work out what their biggest fear is in terms of the sport. So I want to get to know that, what they're trying to avoid. Then I want to learn how to reframe that. So the next stage from that point would be about, I suppose, graded exposure, using visualizations to the fear, and again, learning how to then use that as a platform. So it's just retraining the brain, and that's the first place that we start. The only thing you've got to be careful of with using that strategy is you don't take them away from the desire to win and from the passion.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're an athlete, whether you play American football, if you're a boxer, soccer, sorry, not football, soccer, when you're doing those sports, you have to still perform to your very best. So there's a fine line between getting somebody to become comfortable with the fear and actually taking them away from the desire to win. So it's learning about the fear and not avoiding it. That's the big thing, because so many people will avoid the thing that scares them most when it comes to their sport.
So you dig right into, it sounds like you talk a lot about managing the anxiety, managing
Yes.
the fears that athletes have that are perfectionists. And where is that coming from, do you think, at the root? Is it about this high expectations? Is it about disappointing others? A lot of the things that we talked about?
Yes, the work that I've done with athletes, there is some kind of low self-esteem. They may have been, their whole identity is attached to their sport. They haven't learned how to build that self-esteem separately to their sport. Again, it could be that expectation from a parent or from their coach, but their whole identity is attached to it. And that's often what drives their fear of not being seen as the athlete, or not being seen
The
as
good athlete.
a good athlete. Exactly. So that's where I feel for athletes in particular, and for, any perfectionist, it becomes their identity, and they haven't learned who to be away from that. It's their life, and it usually has been from a very, very young age. Sometimes as young as 3 or 4, depending on the sport.
So do you try to separate the athletic identity from the personal identity, or do you work towards, hey, let's talk about building self-esteem as the person, regardless of the athlete?
That's part of the work for sure. Making the familiar unfamiliar, and becoming comfortable with the anxiety and understanding what the role of the anxiety is, building the resilience to the anxiety. But also, let's look at you as a person. Let's discover who you are. And let's still then work towards winning. But actually, you've got this whole other person that you didn't even know about before. And that person is you. So definitely self-esteem work, and learning about other passions, but still having that desire to win. I think that's important. Whatever job you do, whether you work in a supermarket, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a doctor, it's to do it at the very best of your ability, but to also recognize that mistakes often need to be made to be able to learn, to grow, to evolve into the person that you need to be.
Some great strategies. I've been talking with Ella McCrystal. Check out her on Instagram by her name, Ella McCrystal. And how else can people find you?
I have my website, which is www.ellamccrystal.com.
Great. We'll put that below the video or the podcast. And I appreciate your time. It's been great connecting with you.
Oh no, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I'm really appreciative of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to be notified when we upload more mental training videos just like this one, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just click on my picture in the upper right-hand corner of this video. We've teed up 2 more mental training videos for you to check out today. Please visit our website if you want to learn more about mental training.